He unexpectedly bumped into a girl who showed care when he was injured. This blinded him to believe that she had deeply fallen in love with him, as he didn't realize that she was there with a demonic plan that will ruin his life.
It's scary, right?
Oh, fuck.
Welcome back to Paramount Recapped. I don't have many subscribers, but your single comment is a ray of hope to motivate me. The story kicks off with Chris Decker, a tech millionaire who's so obsessed with security. He probably has more cameras in his house than most reality TV shows. He's on a video call with his ex-wife, Jamie, who's got one thing on her mind: those divorce papers Chris hasn't signed yet. Spoiler alert, he still has feelings for her and is hoping they can work things out. But Jamie's like, nah, you're more married to your work than you ever were to me, and she's not wrong. Their daughter, Willow, is with Jamie full-time, while Chris is probably just hugging his security system for comfort.
It is final.
That night, Chris heads to a nearby shopping mall, likely the most exciting part of his day. While grabbing a coffee, he notices a woman who looks as confused in the wine aisle as someone trying to figure out which Wi-Fi network is theirs. She asks him for help, and because he's a nice guy and clearly looking for any human interaction, he helps her pick out a bottle. This woman, who introduces herself as Sky, strikes up a quick conversation, and Chris is clearly smitten. I mean, who isn't charmed by someone who doesn't know their Merlot from their Pinot, right?
I'm Chris.
Sky.
As Chris is about to leave, he sees Sky standing outside the mall, looking like a stranded puppy. Turns out, her ride got canceled, and she's having trouble booking another one. Chris, being the classic nice guy, offers her a lift because, hey, what's the worst that could happen? Spoiler alert. They arrive at the motel where Sky and her friend Lisa are staying, but Sky doesn't want to go in, saying she just had a huge fight with Lisa, and the vibe in there is about as comfortable as a broken chair. Chris, feeling bad for her, invites her to crash at his place. I mean, who wouldn't trust a random stranger you just met in a shopping mall? Totally normal behavior. When they get to Chris' house, Sky is blown away by how fancy and high-tech the place is. It's like he's auditioning for rich guy cribs. They sip some wine that she probably still doesn't know much about, and things get cozy, real cozy. One thing leads to another, and soon they're cuddling in bed. The next morning, Chris wakes up to find Sky's already gone, and he's probably wishing he had installed some "Where Did My Fling Go" cameras. Back at the motel, Sky's having another argument with Lisa, who's mad that Sky hasn't been paying her share of the rent. Lisa's like, I'm not running a charity here, and Sky, well, she's not great at roommate responsibilities, clearly. Meanwhile, Chris is busy being sad about his divorce, staring longingly at a picture his daughter Willow drew before she left with Jamie. Dude's acting like a character in a sad commercial for long-distance relationships. Later that night, Chris heads to the bar where Sky works, and she's flattered that he came by to see her. They hang out after her shift, strolling through the city. Chris finds out that Sky grew up in an orphanage and doesn't have any family. Cue Chris sympathy mode going into overdrive. At this point, he's so into her, he's practically ready to adopt her. Things take a turn when they get back to Chris' car and find some guy trying to break in. Chris, ever the gentleman, tries to handle it peacefully, but the guy's like, nah, and breaks his leg instead. Now Chris is stuck in a wheelchair, and Sky offers to take care of him. How sweet, right? Chris, now totally head over heels, gives Sky the security code to his house. I mean, what could go wrong when you give a woman you just met complete access to your mansion? Sky returns to the motel, but it's clear she's moving on up in the world, straight into Chris' house. Lisa's annoyed, but Sky's not exactly bothered. Not long after, Ronald, the motel owner, finds Lisa dead in the bathtub. Ronald assumes Lisa was just depressed because Sky ditched her, but well, things are about to get weirder. Meanwhile, back at Chris' place, Sky swipes his phone while he's asleep, which probably isn't even the most suspicious thing that's happened to him this week. Chris wakes up, can't find his phone, and just shrugs it off like it must have misplaced it. He's totally oblivious. Then Jamie calls Chris, looking all concerned and asking if he's okay. She tells him she'll be visiting with their daughter soon. After the call, Chris sees the news about Lisa's death on TV and tells Sky. Sky, eating fried chicken like it's no big deal, brushes it off. Chris, still not catching the red flags flying all over the place, suggests that Sky talk to the police about Lisa. Sky, without batting an eye, drops a bombshell. Oh yeah, I'm the one who killed her. Chris, in full-on shock, asks her again, hoping maybe he heard wrong. But no, Sky's as chill as ever, like she just told him she forgot to take out the trash, not that she murdered someone. Sky drops the bombshell that she had to kill Lisa because, in her words, Lisa wouldn't stop nagging. But here's the kicker. Being Lisa's friend was pretty useful. Turns out Lisa's motel room gave Sky the perfect view to spy on Chris' house. Yep, Sky had been tailing Chris for a whole month, watching his every move from across the street. She had his schedule memorized, knew when he went grocery shopping, and even engineered their random supermarket encounter. That whole falling for Chris act, just part of the game. She wasn't after his heart, she was after his money. Once Chris pieces all this together, he's furious and kicks her out. But Sky's not bothered. She casually whips out his phone, locks all the doors, and incapacitates him like it's just another Tuesday. Meanwhile, Ronald, the motel owner, goes to clean Lisa's old room and stumbles upon a telescope. It's aimed straight at Chris' house. But instead of minding his business, Ronald starts creeping on some naked lady doing yoga next door. Focus, Ronald! Sky then straps Chris to a wheelchair and gags him. Her next move? Torturing him until he coughs up his passwords, security codes, and everything else she needs to drain his bank accounts. Chris tries to stay strong, but Sky is dead serious about her threats. She doesn't hold back on the torture. Meanwhile, Ronald, finally over his yoga voyeurism, shifts the telescope back to Chris' place and is stunned to see Sky there. She's already the town's most wanted woman thanks to her connection with Lisa's death. Ronald spots Chris tied up in a wheelchair and thinks Sky is just his nurse. Talk about missing the obvious signs. While Ronald's being clueless, Sky happily transfers money from one of Chris' accounts to her own. But of course, her greed doesn't stop there. She forces Chris into a Zoom meeting, where he's coerced into getting her funding for a company she just launched. After untying his hands, Chris seizes the chance to try and choke her. But in his weakened state, he can't overpower Sky, and she stabs him for his trouble. Sky's rage escalates when she pulls out a video of Jamie and Willow playing at a park. She threatens to harm them if Chris doesn't cooperate. Desperate to protect his family, Chris gives in and follows Sky's orders. With the money rolling in, Sky disables Chris' communication systems, snaps photos of his valuable art and furniture, and plans to sell everything, including the house itself. As Sky steps out to take care of some business, Ronald finally musters the courage to head to Chris' house, hoping to find Sky. Chris spots Ronald on the CCTV monitor and screams through his gag for help. Ronald breaks a window to get inside, but instead of rescuing Chris, he becomes more interested in the pricey art hanging on the walls. After peeling the tape off Chris' mouth, Ronald demands a bribe before he'll set him free. Chris, desperate at this point, agrees to pay whatever Ronald wants. But just as Ronald starts untying him, Sky returns. Panicked, Ronald dashes upstairs, only to be hunted down by Sky, who's smiling like a cat toying with a mouse. As Sky leisurely stalks Ronald, Chris struggles to fully free himself. He stumbles to his car, but accidentally triggers the alarm, which of course alerts Sky. Fleeing the house, Chris finds a snowmobile and tries to escape, but loses control and crashes by the road. Just then, a car pulls up and a man named Sebastian helps Chris inside. But instead of driving him to safety, Sebastian takes Chris back to his house and beats him senseless. And surprise, Sebastian is Sky's stepdad, in on the whole twisted plot. That night, Sky and Sebastian chop off one of Chris' fingers so they can use his fingerprints to access his final bank account. The next day, Jamie and Willow show up at the house. Willow rushes in to find her dad, while Jamie spots the bloodstains and realizes something's terribly wrong. Sky tries to bluff her way through, saying she's Chris' nurse, but Jamie isn't buying it. Then Sebastian arrives and they take Jamie and Willow hostage, dragging them to the shed where Chris has been held captive. Chris is relieved to see his family safe, but time is running out. While Sky and Sebastian are at the bank trying to rob him blind, Chris hatches a plan. He sends Willow through the air vent to unlock the barn door. Sky and Sebastian, thinking they've hit the jackpot, convince the bank manager to open the safe, only to discover that all of Chris' accounts have been transferred to Jamie after the divorce. Furious, they race back home to squeeze Jamie for the new access codes. Willow, meanwhile, sneaks back into the house and frees her parents. Sebastian searches the house, but gets ambushed by Chris, who's hiding in the closet. They brawl, and Sebastian easily overpowers Chris. Sebastian orders Sky to shoot Chris, but she hesitates and shoots Sebastian instead, killing him on the spot. Seizing the moment, Chris grabs his phone and hides, calling the police and using his house's security system to mess with Sky. He surprises her with an attack, but with all his injuries, he struggles to hold his own. Jamie rushes in to help, but gets injured herself. Sky goes on a rampage, ready to finish them off when, out of nowhere, a gunshot rings out. Sky drops to the ground, fatally wounded. Willow, holding the smoking gun, has saved her parents' lives. Jamie embraces her daughter as the police arrive and the nightmare finally ends.